Hey, it's Chris Leisure Games Crowdfunding Roundup. What do we got going on this week? The only board game guy not scared to wear a Catan shirt in a video. Just kidding. I actually do like this Catan shirt, though. I mean, game is my intro game to, modern board games. Still has a special place in my heart. Now it's just over my heart, literally. So, what do we got going on this week? A little bit of everything. And if you missed it, my top 10 from 2023 went live earlier this week. So, check that out, as well as my top ones of upcoming crowdfunding in February. As always, if you don't like talking about board games, what are you doing here? Because that's what we're doing a ton of. And I am always excited and passionate. Let's see how many we can do this week to get our running total up well into the higher double digits. I don't know. Let's go. Look, first up, Last Light, 2nd edition. I'm going to do a mea culpa on this. I'm going to eat some crow, right? I read the rule book for the campaign. I'm really interested in, I'm going to try and trade for this game before the campaign ends, folks. Do I care about the deluxe edition? Not really whatsoever. The only thing halfway intriguing about it are those little planet things. The extra big plastic miniatures are in very nice table aesthetic, and let's be clear, it would be awesome to have that, but I don't also want to shell out $200. So that's why I'm going to try and trade. But I don't have anything worth trading, and no one's going to want to trade with me anyway, so that's besides the point. But rulebook seems rather intuitive. I like the rulebook. You know what? I'm glad you improved it. Kind of makes me wonder what was in the first rulebook, but they're not actually doing as hot as I thought in the first couple get-goes here. So that's interesting. But is it because people are happy with the game in the first place and the ones who got it already got it? Or the ones who maybe got it at retail aren't interested yet in it because it's so still too hot for them to know how much they like it and they're unwilling to pay for the deluxe upgrade? I don't know. I still think 1,500 backers and $167,000 is good for the beginning of the first week. And so we'll see, right? Gray Fox did a bunch of exclusives. Most of them are, though, deluxeifications. There is a little bit of gameplay content down here. You can see there's got 5 factions right here of a total of giving you, 10 exclusives there as well. So 10 out of the 25. Ooh, that's a higher proportion. That's a little bit not as pleasant from that aspect of things. But these are what I was talking about here. These little cubes, the acrylic planets. That's kind of cool. I'll give them that. That's a cool aesthetic. I like that. They're offering more add-ons here with more factions. And you can upgrade your version if you want as a whole, if you got just the retail version, which has a little bit of the extra alien faction cards. And they do the Gray Fox thing of saying you might be able to get it later, you might not be able to get it. Upgraded resin, 20% larger with a glowing center. I mean, that's cool. That's cool. But I'm still not sure I want to pay that much of a cost increase. Essentially, this game is you have 6 cards in your hand, 6 action cards, sort of like a Race for the Galaxy, only meets Cosmic Encounter, if you will. And it takes a 4X style of things where you just play one card every single turn simultaneously. You just go around and play it and you take your action. Well, you have a refresh card as one of your 6 cards. And then based on when everybody has laid their refresh card down, then you all get to do that. And it changes the board state by rotating it one by 90 degrees and then the other ring by 45 degrees in the other way. And so it changes the board positions that are going to be dependent on what you're able to do and where you want to do them. And then, obviously, if you have already played all of your cards and you don't have any cards left in your hand, you get to pick up all your cards except for that refresh card, because that refresh card, again, is going to do something completely different in terms of harvesting the light and getting your points, because you're trying to get 20 of these light in order to win the game in the first place. Rulebook's there, tons of people talking about this game, tons of all the hype from the biggest people across the board, so you don't need to listen to me jabber on about it. Whatever else you can get from them instead, right? Second tier YouTuber, they talk about the ones that are asymmetric and exclusive there, so you can go through all of those informations. And again, it's a huge amount of money though. And that's probably the biggest thing. You have to love this game. $250. That's a ton of money for a ton of additional content. And I just hope it's not, and you guys can tell me in the comment section down below, whether or not it's more like something along the lines of Apiary, right? That was my big problem with Apiary. Apiary was presented as okay, here's 20 different bug factions, B factions, right? And it was just slight different tile placement on the boards themselves as the most asymmetric. And that's not asymmetry to me. That's slight nuance difference, but it's more technically the truth rather than this is what I'm expecting from a root-like faction. And part of it's going to be probably somewhere in between. And I'm just not sure I want to pay this much for it without having tried it in the first place, because that's a ton of money. That's a ton of money. Launch Boon? Oh yeah, is that the one? Oh, that's the one that is doing the thing that I said that I didn't like earlier in the month. Yeah, anyway. I wonder if they did it with this campaign. Don't have a clue. Probably, but maybe not. So we'll see. Again, I think it's doing really well, but the question is, if you didn't like 4X, is it going to change your mind? And I don't know, but I'm willing to give it a look, see if I can trade for it soon. So there you go. Last Light. I have so many things to say about this, and I need to keep it, semi-coherent, totally not ramble, and, making angry faces at the camera. But also, this is a TCG, folks. This is a T-freaking-C-G. It's by, the maker of Dixit and Mysterium and a couple other pedigrees of that ilk that you'll recognize. but it's got almost $1 million with 2,700 backers. They have a pledge level for $5,400 right now. TCG is a pure speculative market, and I fear that most of the people backing this are buying it because they want it to be the next Flesh and Blood. They want it to be the next whatever, so they can scalp it in the secondary market, right? And that's where speculation is even coming about with Star Wars United or Star Wars Unlimited right now, because people are hoping that that's going to be somewhat, but also they're not doing it as much as, say, One Piece is, or Magic the Gathering, or some of those other ilks where the rares and randoms and super legendary, awesome, full foil art, cards are going to be super hard to come by, like, Dragon Ball Z game. I mean, the base decks, 2 base decks for 24 euros, that's not a bad deal whatsoever. 149 again for 2 of these, and 36 boosters. Again, I think boosters for like Star Wars Unlimited, I think those are only like 24 packs if I'm recalling correctly, but those are going for about $99. So that's not a horrible price comparatively, and it says it's a little exclusive with the boosters, not the starter decks, but the boosters. They're going to have limited exclusive, iconography. But the only way you're going to make money on this, folks, is if the game actually catches and this game becomes super popular. You can't have this limited demand that a lot of the TCGs run into. TCGs are a purely speculative market nowadays. We've seen this blow up on crowdfunding multiple times over the last multiple years. I've covered it and I've kind of railed it because, again, if you weren't interested in the business model of exploiting this, I can't get away from the feeling that it's at least part of that. So, uncut sheets, they did that with like Pokemon or whatever. And again, I don't know. Again, that's where people are speculating that maybe that's going to be worth money down the line. But really? I mean, art sleeves, playmats, maybe that's where people are spending the extra money that I didn't see made up for in the pledge levels. And you've already got expansion deck boxes here. So that's fine. You're going to get a few extra cards, alternate art cards and other things along those lines, foiled inside of whatever box. So I don't know. There's rulebook here. There's how to play. Is it that much different? Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the mechanics. How does it actually compare? And so let's talk about that. Let me calculate it out here in a second, and let's go. So going back up here a second, let's scroll all the way back up to the top of this point, and I'm going to completely refresh this page because it's been a little while since I started. And we have $1.3 million going on. You have 3,800 people, and I did the math in the meantime in the edited part of this video. And essentially what that turns out to be is you have almost $345,000 is not accounted for based on the pledge levels alone and 91 backers. Now, that's not such a big deal because essentially what that also means is that you've got about averaged out on every single pledge $90 worth of add-ons. So that's not unreasonable, but that's also a lot of money being spread around potentially if that's all it is, right? That's $345,000. It's not accounted for in the pledge levels. So you're getting the sleeves, you're getting the playmats, you're getting all of this other stuff. And let's talk about the gameplay content here for a second. The gameplay content is very different than what I was expecting altogether, especially from a TCG. So what we've got going on here is you have basically these tracks that you're going to be moving your characters along, trying to get to the end before your opponent. And when you're doing this, you're taking from your pool of 6 originally, you're placing several of them down in front of you as mana cards that can be used as resource cards to basically be able to play some of your cards from your hand in the future. 3 different types of cards: character, spells, or permanents. You play back and forth until someone passes. Then with the mountain, forest, and oceans, you figure out who has higher statistics, and then you move accordingly to the next region. Now, you have things that you can reserve, you have things that are going to be lost, you have things that you're going to be able to gain with card manipulation, with the flavor text and the abilities on them, and then you rinse and repeat, drawing back up at the end to then do the same thing over and over again until someone gets to the end in those tracks. So that's it. Rules are there, which is really good for a TCG as well. I wasn't expecting the rules, but it's like a 4-page rule book, so take that for what you will. I don't know. This is speculative market at best, and it doesn't look like a bad thing, but I want to hands-on play it more than anything else. The sight unseen playing, buying, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars of this for potentially going nowhere like a lot of TCGs do, unless you're one of the big few. I can't risk the money on that, but there you go. Check it out. It's got a nice aesthetic too. Then Trash Cult. We're talking Trash Cult here because you pick one of the asymmetric cults of animals and they have a favorite food, and you're going to be trashing cards, playing through the action system that they've got there in, I think, one of 4 different actions that you can take on your turn, and then doing whatever you can to get the most food cards based on the numbers of players. You have a 5-card hand you're starting with here, drawing back up to 6 at the beginning of every turn though, unless you already have 6 and you draw 1 anyway. Taking 2 of said actions that I mentioned: recruiting, adding food to your shrine, performing a sacrifice, as they say here. So sacrificing cards in order to get an ability that's going to help you in a chaos card sort of way. These are like the overpowered situation cards more than anything else. Or play an action card or discard a card just as an action too. Get the most to win. Tells you right there the asymmetry in terms of how much you need to win. That's about it. That's about it. They have a little how to play. They have a little, TikTok video there as well for the unboxing. All of this is TikTok here if you like that sort of thing. So little stretch goal, little shipping, just something light. It's getting a lot of money actually for all things considered. So 13,000. Yeah, there you go. Animals and card games. We're seeing a ton of it. Next up, Triumph from Planix Games. $46,000. This is like a civ building card-based situational game where you're bidding influence on a turn-by-turn, round-by-round basis in order to take over the offices of said places you're influencing, which is going to give you higher turn priority order in that office to be more dynamic and to get better actions out of that individual area of the game as a whole. And you're playing this over 3 rounds with 7 phases each. However, 2 through 6 of the phases, I believe they say, are the bidding phases, where you're bidding for these specific offices and then taking the actions. Highest bid wins. But you only have, 5 cards to match those 5 rounds, and not necessarily everyone is going to get the ability to use every single one of those potential options as you go along in terms of which orders or offices are available to you, and you get compensated by getting additional influence that allows you to increase your bid in another round if you want. And so it gives you a little bit of a dynamic there to mitigate, or cards additionally that will allow you to mitigate those influence bids in the first place. Deluxe is going to get you, metal coins and an expansion to go along with it. And it's really a little bit of a heavier read overall with a civ game basis here, because it runs you through what each of these offices or these areas of interest are in the rule book. And so it's probably about a 25-page read, and it's a little bit denser than anything else on crowdfunding this week. So if this looks good to you, you need to realize that not only are you having all of these different ways of influencing on the board, but also these other conflict cards that you're going to be doing battle with a die-based system, not numerically speaking, but number of pips. So like on a 6-sided pip, they have like 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, for example. So it's a little bit staggered in that, but then you're also building, creating, and also trying to mitigate the barbarians, which are trying to conquer Rome at the same time as you're trying to control it. And if the barbarian commander ever gets to the end of their track, you all lose regardless. So there's a little bit of that element. And if you want to deluxify the heck out of it, those are actually some cool looking meeples. So you can get that as well if you want. Kickstarter edition as well, cardboard editions, but doesn't get you the plastic or the wooden meeples. Some unlocks here as well, and a little bit of a basic overview of the game in a whole. But you're really going to have to go watch one of these videos or read the rulebook. And even reading the rulebook, you get a general sense of things, but you're really going to have to dig deep more to get the actual, where does the strategy come from? Is this a dynamic or a mechanic that you're going to like in the first place? So it's not inexpensive at the same time. $53 for the Kickstarter edition and $113 for the deluxe edition, which is a huge increase. And you're going to wait 1.5 years, almost 2 years, if this is anything on target. 6-month delay, like normal, right? That would put you September 2025. But we'll go with March, as they say there. Either way, it's doing really well. $47,000. Check it out. Next up, Ruination Bloodsworn from Travis Chance. You may remember him from a few other games, including actually, which I did not realize, the upcoming Cthulhu Dark Providence from Simon. I didn't know that, but also Forsaken and Path of Light of Shadow. So if you're familiar with those, maybe you're more intrigued. Now, this is not a standalone expansion. This is an expansion that's going to add a few more elements to the base game of Ruination in the first place, which I wasn't actually aware of. So it put a new game on my radar. And so what you're doing in this area control, battling, take that style of resource management game, is you are slowly trying to, control all the areas before the end of the game, trying to get the most victory points as you can on a 1 action per turn basis. Basically, there's 3 different action decks that you're going to be choosing from, each of them representing as a whole 1 action, but each having a deck of cards that's going to have some asymmetry in how you're going to be able to utilize that action, or different abilities that can go along with it to work synergistically. And so on your turn, you're taking one of those and sort of completing through all of the phases that go along with that. And so then they basically break down, I'm probably not remembering all 3 correctly right now because they're all blurring together, but like move, search, and scavenge, or something along those lines. And so if you're moving into certain areas, if you're encroaching on other people's territories, it's going to like trigger battles that you're going to have to fight through, and each of your units is going to have separate points, and you're going to be able to recruit them. and you're going to be taking those sorts of things to go along with it. But what the new expansion is adding here, if you're familiar with the base game in the first place, is it's getting 2 main additions that they talk about here. An asymmetric chief, which is going to give you additional tactical abilities if you roll a certain, I believe, face on a die. But then also you have horde asymmetry cards, which are just like one-time uses as well. They also offer 2 slight variances to 2 of the tracks. I'm forgetting Glory and one of the other ones, again, doing really well with words today. But not only do they affect where you're getting additional bonus dice rolling from if you're furthest on this track as a whole, but it also offers different rewards along the track in the first place as well. So a little bit more asymmetry, a little bit more just oomph as a whole. And the extra little expansion that's going along with this is a solo one as well, if you like that sort of thing. So if you want it though, I mean, you're really looking for anything more than the expansion, it's going to be triple digits. Take that for what you will, a little bit of add-ons, you go through a little bit of the base game here as well. I didn't watch the video. I actually went over to Board Game Geek and checked out the rulebook there, and they tell you a little bit more. Here, Glorious and the Glory track, that's the other thing I couldn't remember. They added defense token that's going to be affected with some of the new units. That also allows you just not to get massacred in these battles as well. So, new action deck, new decks basically to give your game some more asymmetry. And they talk about the chieftain upgrade. And like I said here, involving the special result, it gives you additional benefit for those guys. So there you go. That's pretty much everything. They give you the new rulebook here. It's relatively short. That's just the expansion rulebook. And it's going to be whatever it's going to be. Shipping is going to be not too bad as a whole. And the timeline potentially puts us before the end of the year if things stay on track, which, again, not as a super heavy miniature game, and most of it is just a smaller box expansion, might be completely feasible. So there you go. Ruination, Bloodsworn. So next up we have Stellar Drift, pull and write space board game, if you will, because you're pulling these dice from the bag in order to fill all of your tracks, as Rado says here, or Rado's channel says here, to tell a story instead of just more of an abstract feeling like a lot of other roll and writes. Is that true? I have no idea whatsoever. You're getting sheets, you're getting ships. Careful saying some bad stuff there if I'm not, choosing my words incredibly carefully. And guess what? They're even going to give you some pencils to go along with it. So now you can be complete. Collecting your income, repairing your ship, moving these sections up to upgrade your ship in the first place, get your tech tree going, and combo-licious, if you will. Basically, per the rulebook, you're gathering this income, you're getting energy, you're getting more ways to get cubes, and you're using action selection based on the cubes that you pull in order to complete these areas of the ships, because essentially what you're doing over 7 rounds is you're trying to simultaneously outperform, out-repair your opponents in terms of how well you repair your ship with your various tech tree and tech allocation points to allow you some engine build, if you will, as you go along, literally, figuratively there as well. So a few little stretch goals in addition to some upgrades, and that's what you're going to get. It's almost a 20-page rulebook though, and so you might want to check it out because it definitely looks like a slightly more advanced version of your roll and writes in that sense. And again, how do you feel about the dice mechanic, right? Making orange juice out of oranges. I almost said something else there, so I caught myself, thankfully, but that's about it. It's going to be $10, $15, or $20, depending on where you're located to get it. And it's going to cost you $25 in the first place. So, if you're outside North America, do you want to pay the price of the game to get it shipped to you? That's what you got to think about right now. Again, nice thought. Try before you buy. Got $14,000. Roll and writes are hot. Let's go. Next up, Ninjas Unleashed. $17,000. Again, I haven't mentioned it, but this is like the 3rd or 4th launch boom candidate that we've seen. So again, I should probably stop doing this full time and just get a consulting job and have all of the indie crowdfundings come to me for crowdfunding tips. I don't know. What you're doing here is you're upgrading your ninjas and you're playing various ninjas to get various points in order to get enough points for the end victory as a whole. You're probably going to have to watch one of these videos because I don't really get a good sense of the gameplay as a whole. I had to watch a little bit of the how to play video to get any sort of semblance of what you're doing here as you're slowly building your asymmetric ninja clan, trying to be better than your opponents. And they offer some deluxifications in an early bird, and they split out the miniatures as a whole. But the flow is just not intuitive to me, and I'm just probably missing it and having trouble with it as a whole this week. But that's what I don't really see on the page either, right? We still haven't gotten to like how you play, and this was some of the video that I watched right here. So it's high quality, you can get a better sense of it, but it doesn't really lay out these exact mechanisms on the page. And even when you click on the how to play, right, it says, okay, you get your cards, you recruit or train to go into missions. You get 3 actions right here: drawing, enhancing, sabotaging, play tactics, trigger special powers, and go on mission phases to transform your ninjas into better ninjas. So you're trying to decimate other people's houses and win the game by decimating your opponent somehow. So again, I wish there was a little bit more on the page with this one. I just don't quite get the sense of the flow, and I could just use a little bit more of a, okay, what makes this unique? How does this do unique things? Because they talk about, the game board here, they talk about your individual player board of the different areas of the ninjas and where you're going to be putting them and how you're going to be placing them and how you're going to be going on missions. So again, this is probably the biggest go check out a video game this week as a whole that I can mention. I saw this one being advertised a ton on Facebook prior to launch, and I'm glad to see again that it's doing so well. So if it's your ilk, check it out. Next up, Atomic Kaiju. Actually, a slight tongue twister there if you say it too fast. It's some sort of deck building, currency based, buy your own monsters, upgrade your deck, upgrade your science and materials in order to, eventually build the Super Kaiju, which is going to help you potentially lay waste to your opponent, because it's more of a take that deck building game, as your opponent in their city have about 75 life points and you need to be attacking to take them out. And so they run you through the Kaiju that are going to be available, but if you aren't careful, you're going to get toxic waste. Is that everything? That is everything that I see at this point. So I have no other idea what makes it unique. Why is it different? What are these things going to do? How does it flow? And why should you get it right now besides the back indie sort of thing? So, for that little of information, it's got $4,800, which is relatively impressive. More information, more why, more mechanics, and maybe funded. So there you go. Next up in the 3D world, we're going with Meenakshi. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I'm sorry. Temple. 3D constructing via either plastic or wooden temple pieces with little slabs, sort of like a Rhino Hero-esque vibe, if you will, as you can see right here. I didn't realize this one was launching this week, so apparently other people did, and there's lots of big name videos down here if we go down further. And what you're going to be getting here is you're going to be getting sort of like almost a block and key style arrangement setup meets Rhino Hero, if you will. And essentially what you're doing is taking one of like 4 or 5 different actions on a turn-by-turn basis, either putting these pillars out there, creating a new slab level, or upgrading your abilities to engine build in terms of what you need, or to be able to store more pillars of a certain color in the first place, because there's going to be a certain pattern color matching to go along with this when you are placing them out there in order to score points. The game goes until someone builds like their 7th level, I think is what it says. You're going to have asymmetric goal cards. You're going to have the asymmetric upgrade cards that are going to allow you to, again, get more abilities and upgrade and build further and faster. And then you're also going to have different cards that are going to be placement wise here, matching, which will get you more points overall, like I just mentioned. Wooden versus plastic is the deluxification versus the regular version. And a little bit of an exclusive content here with a couple mini expansions as well. Endgame scoring is a little bit asymmetric when we pull up the rulebook here. As I mentioned, installing your 7th level, including the basement, and you get 1 point for every pair of statues you have left over, 1 point for each upgrade card you used as storage over here because you can hold more, and then sort of a set collection style of vibe of points depending on what letters based on the cards that you have still in your hand. And so then if we go back over here, price-wise, the special VIP edition, which again, they don't clarify what the VIP is on the table apparently, or at least they didn't initially at the time of me pulling this up in the first place. I'm guessing or wondering if it's like a launch boom sort of thing, like the FOMO I said before, right? Where you had to sign up before the campaign to get something, or maybe it's just a previous campaign or a previous product that you've backed. So again, it's not very clear at the time of me doing this, but I mean, that's a big discount. That's $11 discount. That's a 20% discount right there overall. And the VIP, again, $69 versus $79. That's all in deluxe, all deluxe, $69 and $79, which is more like $90 and $100. So same price differential, but it's going to cost you, 20 more bucks there. That's not insignificant. As I mentioned, placing your action, placing your meeple, you're going forward across these boards, taking the action selection, depending on what row gets you what action. It also gets you additional benefits if you're in the middle, depending on what action you're going to take each time and how that's going to be differing. Again, constructing those statues onto your tower, getting the blessings based on the tower level that's there in the first place, putting new levels down, then upgrading your player board like we alluded to and talked about there, or gaining the white statue of Shiva. Rulebook, Bitewing does a great how to play video, so check that one out if you're really interested. Otherwise, we have a bunch of preview videos, it looks like. So no stretch goals. I mean, it kind of worries me, just like with blocking key up there. I like the idea of 3D building like this, and I'm horrible at it, and I don't play it well, and it just doesn't work out personally for me too often. Again, this has try before I buy written all over it, because production also with this 3D building stuff has to be absolutely top-notch, spot on, because you can't have any variability or any discrepancy when it comes to these materials. Otherwise, a tower like this is going to be incredibly hard to keep up. And so, yeah, it's kind of cool looking though in the first place. But that's probably why it's got $21,000 as a whole. There you go. So that's it. Really short this week. Not nearly as many games overall. So that's not going to bring our total for the month of January up as high as I'd like, but still covering a ton of games and a little bit of everything. This was probably the least of the weeks of January, but that's okay. If you missed out earlier in the week, my top ones for February, go check that one out, because some big names, some bigger names, some things I'm going to have a hard time really avoiding as a whole, and a couple videos that I will be talking about and displaying on the channel in the first place. So it's going to be a great month. Can't believe it's already freaking February, right? Where did January go? January felt like it was 45 days long, and then all of a sudden it feels like, where did it go in the first place? So I don't know what's going on. Am I going to do a news video tomorrow? Am I going to do an upcoming video? I don't really know. Tune in, subscribe if you want, and find out. Because last week I did the combo with a little bit of the upcoming stuff and a little bit of the news. Although the news was fun to do too. So, by the way, did you see my video, speaking of that one, of the 10 upcoming for February? One of those, spoilers, in case you didn't check out GameFound this week, Simon appears to be totally defecting over to GameFound now. Because they've got a new Song of Fire and Ice tactics game. You remember their skirmish game? Yeah. They're doing a 2-player tactical version of that, which doesn't look like it's really compatible with the previous one. So I guess George R. Martin needs some more cash inflow. I don't know. Guy posted on his blog. He's not ever going to finish that next book, folks. He's not ever going to finish that next book. And let me know if you'd want to see this. But the other thing I'm thinking about doing is I just got a couple big boxes this week. Should I just open them up, put them in front of me, ramble a little bit, show them off, and give you some unfiltered thoughts on them before I even get them played? Unfiltered on my channel, right? That doesn't happen. I don't get myself in too much trouble. I do sometimes. A little too glib. It's my channel. I'm sorry. I'm sorry sometimes. I have to apologize. But you know what? Like I said at the beginning of the video, sometimes I eat crow. Sometimes I have to just say, screwed that one up, guys. My bad. Because it's never what I'm trying to do, but I am terribly imperfect as a whole, as my kids get to see every day. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Peace out. See you around.